Google and Netlist have been involved in a lawsuit over the last decade, hinging around several patents that Google stole from Netlist to give them the power to become the search juggernaut that they have over the last decade. As a result, Google then has basically given up their right to go to the Supreme Court to argue the judgment. So the question is, how much does Google owe Netlist, and when will they pay it? They owe the royalties, we know, since all the way back to 2010. So how are they going to pay it, and when are they going to pay it? Complicating this even further is that Netlist has proven that Micron and Samsung have done the same thing. And so there are judgments there. So this has all been pooled together. And now we need to figure out what's going to happen to Netlist. They're about a $300 million company that could become a $10 billion company. I want to get to the bottom of it, so I went and found the best expert I could, and that's Jacob Braun. So let's talk to Jacob and see where this is going.
Best of Us Investors presents Carrie Griegmeyer.
Okay, I want you to meet Jacob Braun. He's a prominent writer for Seeking Alpha. That's how I first became aware of him, probably a year, maybe a year and a half ago. And he specializes in the medical field, a technical medical field, and he has done some very interesting work on the Netlist Google suit. How long have you been following it, Jacob?
Probably 3 to 4 years now.
Okay. According to your last article, it seemed like it probably had another 2 to 3 years to go. Can you just kind of bring us up to date where you think it's at, and what's in the future and what we should look for?
Yeah. So first thing I would highly recommend is to read the article I wrote on Seeking Alpha. So this article is probably about 15 pages going into many complex details about the case. So it gives you a little bit of a background and then tries to dive into the different cases. It's very difficult in a single video to go over all the different intricacies. And like I said, this is a very complex situation that even I struggle fully understanding. I co-wrote this piece with someone. So just for that reason, I would highly recommend reading that piece. Now, coming into what Netlist situation is. So what has Netlist always been over the past 10 years? Well, Netlist has been a company that is striving to push forward the chip field, specifically with RAM and server technology, and they've gotten over 100 patents, and many of them are very critical patents for different things within technology. Now, what basically happened is they were using this technology, trying to license this out to people because whatever company wanted to use it. And Google looked at their technology and liked it, but didn't like the price Netlist was asking. So Netlist eventually believed that Google had stolen and was building their own version of their technology and using it in their servers. And this was right at the turn of when Google started to become a dominant search player. And one could attribute that in part to Netlist's superior technology being in their servers. A judge ordered a random cross-section of Google servers, and from that report, it is believed that every single server had Netlist technology within it. So Google was caught using this technology. So after that, Google fought the validity of these patents for over 10 years. And there's multiple patents in these cases. There's multiple companies in these cases, but the main one is the 912 patent, which is a server chip technology. And so Google fought this for over 10 years, gets to the top patent court. It's validated by them for Netlist, and Netlist wins, and it was deemed a seminal patent. So a patent that is industry changing. The only next step you could do is you could appeal it to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court really doesn't deal with patents. So Netlist fully validates it. Then they come back, continue the lawsuits against Google. And this was about 2019. They started continuing it. So 10 years from 2009 to 2019. And they also added a few other lawsuits with different companies, which are mentioned and talked about in the article. But again, the main lawsuit is against Google. Then this case continues to proceed with Google, but there's just delay after delay after delay. And I think overall, these delays just show the inefficiency of the court system and how difficult it is for a small company to fight against big companies. And then another big event that happened is Samsung, who they're also in a lawsuit with. They're right now primarily in lawsuits with three companies: Google, Micron, and Samsung. They're also in this lawsuit with Samsung over the same patent, and they re-challenged the validity of the patent. So this patent already was for 10 years, was fully verified, 10 years of lawsuits, and now they're just re-challenging it. So in the law, for criminal law, you have double jeopardy. Well, in patent law, there's no such thing. You can just go and challenge patents as much as you want. And these big companies have a lot of money to be able to do this. So right now, the Google case is somewhat on a hold. Samsung's on a hold, depending on these things. And then most recently, I would highly recommend this. I tweeted out this article. My Twitter is at real Jacob Braun if you want to find it. Netlist CEO, he doesn't really do conference calls, doesn't really do analyst calls, so no one really ever hears from him. If you contact their IR department, multiple people have said this. You typically don't really get a response. So their CEO is somewhat doesn't hold a big public presence, and he released an op-ed style article saying that if he was advising a young entrepreneur today, he would recommend them not go through the US because of the patent system being so messed up. So this somewhat quiet CEO then goes and tells his story in this article. And I can pass it to you and you can include it in this video.
Yeah, I'll include a link to your original article, and if you will, I'll include a link to that as well.
Yeah, and so in that article but written by the CEO Chuck Hong, he outlines what has happened from their perspective and really how much the court system is against small companies, and just how difficult it is to be a smart company. And really, that's why we call this a David versus Goliath story, because if the company is able to pull through, which I believe they will, the reward will be large. But this happens to a lot of companies, and they're just beat on by these big companies. And they eventually go bankrupt, and the big company then buys up those patents they were fighting over for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, that's what it appears to me to be, is that as long as Google can stall it, and people are not running to Netlist door to use their technology and to fill their coffers, because they do business with Google, they do business with Samsung, and they do some business with what is it?
Micron.
Micron. So
Netlist is blackballed.
Yeah, they're being blackballed. So I guess, and as I understand it, Chuck has been reluctant to sit down and have any negotiations or giving any indication that there is a price at which it could go away. Would you concur that?
Yeah, and for sure. And I think one, he's probably not getting the price he believes is fair. But number two, I think it's something deeper. I think this is personal to him because this is his company. He built it, and these people, in essence, are just trying to tear it down. So I've written and talked about this. I don't really believe that. I find it unlikely that the CEO will settle, especially anytime soon. unless he's forced to because of financial reasons. Like he
Yeah.
settled once with SK Hynix, and they were on the door of bankruptcy, or and they needed the money, and that deal turned out to be very good for them, got a lot of money in, and helped them fund these other lawsuits. But they took a bad deal, much worse than many people thought. And so I think that, one, the CEO doesn't want to compromise for a bad deal, but two, this is personal. He wants the headline to be Google stole this technology,
Yeah.
and this is the biggest patent infringement lawsuit of all time. So that's why if you're an investor, yes, it's gonna be a long time horizons, lots of up and downs, but in the end, the payout could be very big.
And
That's why
what
this is somewhat of a lottery pick.
the number I've seen thrown around is it's a $10 billion lawsuit, and they're about a $300 million company at this point. So that would mean that price could go from $1.25, what it is today, to $43 in if this thing comes to a settlement.
Yeah, and one thing I would say is no one truly knows how big this lawsuit can be, because Google's server numbers aren't public information. So it's not like you can just do a math equation. Well, if you do this amount for each
Mhm.
server, you would owe this much, because we don't know how many servers Google has. Google has kept it very private. And that's one thing actually working in Netlist's favor. If discovery were to happen into Google's books, into Google's servers, a lot of information that I'm sure Google, or if same thing for Samsung, doesn't want out. So they're gonna be incentivized to not open their books. Right now, they're trying to delay that happening, but when discovery happens, that's if you're gonna see a settlement, it would be before discovery. If
I
they go
thought
to
that I thought they had ordered some discovery
Yeah,
back
yeah, but
in September.
um they've done some, but like the full discovery,
Okay.
um I don't think so. And that's what we wrote. If they're gonna settle, it would be before they would be able to go fully in looking at stuff.
Okay. All right. Is there any precedent for this? Can you find anything else that would give us guidance and say, well, this is what happened in this case, and
Yeah.
or yeah, okay.
So actually in this article, my co-author was able to find some similar cases. The number one was Vringo, who owned some patents, and they ended up winning their case. And again, you can go in more detail on that. And then some other people, for example, Qualcomm in the 1999
Yeah.
had a similar situation, and they went on a meteor ride of stock price. And what was interesting, that was during the dot-com crash. So it was going
Oh,
up while everything else was crashing. And what's so important about that, which might actually be Netlist's timing while all the other things are down, they'll go up, is that not only did you go up, you went up with more buying power of other stocks. So if you go up in a where every stock's going up, yeah, you're going
okay.
up, but you're not going to be able to get the same equivalent of other companies, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But in this situation, you would be able to get more of other companies if you moved your investment to other companies.
Okay. I remember, I think I saw on Netflix something similar to this, that Google got in a lawsuit with some German company
Yeah,
about Google Maps, and what the precedent is, they stole their system too.
yeah.
So this is kind of the nature of the beast. That if we'll look at it, we'll examine it fully, and then hey, the guys in the shop down there can duplicate it, and why should we pay somebody for it?
Yeah, and again, in the article I wrote, the one Chuck Hong talks about it from the company's perspective, in his article, and then the article I wrote on Seeking Alpha, I dove into a little bit of just how somewhat corrupt the patent system is, and it's not necessarily corrupt; it's just the way it was written
Yeah,
allows for corruption.
you had indicated that they kind of work on a job basis. the more jobs they get, the more money they make. And
Yeah,
so this
yeah.
new review is a new income source for the patent review board.
Yeah, and I mean that makes sense. Well, if you do more work, you should if you do more work, you should be able to get more money. But it gives them a perverse incentive to take bogus claims
Mhm.
just for the money.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very clear. I know in my position, we in fact had a conversation about this on our stock talk the other last Friday. And I have had the stock. I think I bought it at about $2.50. It went up to $10, so I had a 4x. It's now down to about $1.25. And my opinion is this is free money at this point. If it goes away, it goes away. But I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to stay with it. And my advice to anybody who's listening to this is that if you're interested in this, it's a long shot. It's not a drop kick, and it all might go away.
Yeah, for sure. I think you have somewhat of a floor because of the technology, but the company is quickly approaching a day where the lawsuits are very expensive and they don't have the revenue coming in to keep funding them. So they're gonna have to dilute or they're gonna have to take a settlement.
Okay. So you feel this is part of Google's strategy. Let's starve them to death, and when they scream uncle, we'll offer something.
Yeah, I mean it's always their strategy. Just because these small companies don't have the resources to fight.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I highly recommend reading Chuck Hong's piece.
Okay.
It's almost sad to read because I mean he's right. The U.S. who at one time prided themselves on innovation has now been set up to favor the big corporations.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get 3 million views on this, and maybe we can get a groundswell that that speaks to our lawmakers, because that's what it seems to be. Until somebody changed the rules, Google's going to play the game their way.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. Anything you want to add, Jacob?
No, I would just recommend reading those two pieces. Again, I'll send them to you so you can post them in the
Okay.
video. And again, this is a very complex case with many moving parts. I recommend being able to find some way to follow it on a more
Yeah.
consistent basis, whether that's joining your group or whether that's following it on stock twits. There's a lot of very intelligent posters on there, or there's a Reddit page for this.
Yes.
Any of those three sources, you could get more consistent information with all the different details, and that's really going to help you be able to follow it.
One other thought that I have relative to this is the precedent that it's setting. This is potentially the destruction of the entrepreneurial system, where the big guy just eats, and maybe that's the way it's been forever. But somebody needs to address this and use it as a sample or example of how we have to move forward.
For
Okay.
sure.
All right, Jacob. As always, thank you for your input. I anxiously read your articles, and I would suggest you all go to Seeking Alpha, find Jacob's article, and then follow him. He speaks to the medical field very astutely and in tremendous depth. So thank you again, Jacob, for joining us, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
As always, thanks for having me on, Carrie.